themselves, because I don't believe it would work. I don't think you can do that when you've got the real power out there that wouldn't allow that to happen.
Not so much an invasion, but a big display in the sky to create fear and to make people easier to control. Carol Rosin said that she had always been told by Werner von Braun many years ago.
Yeah, Werner shared that apparently before he died, that it was one of the programs that the government at the time was considering. You know, they've had these little plots they've been working on all the time. This war, that war, the stock market crash, this, that, you know, all these little magician things that while I'm showing you this hand, I'm picking your pocket with this one. They may have had that in mind at that time, but I don't think they're thinking of it seriously now, because I think that our so-called powers that be, which is a joke, are in such close relationship and collusion with the real power that it would never work, that they would never allow it. It's like they're not going to allow a thermonuclear war. Yeah. There's too much valuable real estate here. Not just this rich gold mine of human genetics. What a ripe reservoir we are of genes and, God, the whole species, plus all of the other fauna and all of the other flora. This is a valuable planet. And they love it. They own it. We've never owned it. We just live on it. They farm us, so to speak. God. Charles Fort was right, to some degree. We are property. And we're going to remain property until we reach a point where we can literally stand up and say, all right, we're going to do this now ourselves, and prove it to the universe. We're dealing with a universe filled with life, and most of it is so far beyond our own. I used an analogy one time, and I said, they look upon us like we look upon headhunters in New Guinea. Now, you've seen the films, you know, History channels and all the rest. They're naked, they're running around with these stupid things on their penises and, you know, bones through their whatever. Pathetic, sad, primitive savages. They're not to be feared. They're not to be abused. They're to be nurtured and cared for. Well, the difference between some of them out there and us is the difference between us and these poor guys in New Guinea and those rainforests out there. Now, I joked about that, and then I learned later that that wasn't really a very accurate comparison. I learned later that I didn't even come close to an appropriate comparison. That the real comparison between many of them out there and us is closer to how we feel about the chimpanzee. And Bill, if you allow your mind to take those trips, and I know you do, there are creatures and life forms out there that are literally godlike. A lot of the remote viewers who've encountered them, and I've seen a few of them myself, look upon them as transcendentals. They manifest as living energy life forms, forms of light. They're the same kind that appeared when Jesus was walking around. Probably the same kind of guys that showed up with poor, Joseph Smith. I didn't know the history of the Mormon faith. Poor Joe had an event one time happening in his bedroom where two brilliant, beautiful, tall, glimmering, glistening beings of pure light appeared in his bedroom. Those are transcendentals. Now, the difference between them and us is between us and the rhesus monkey. So I think I'm getting close, maybe not, but I'm thinking I'm getting close to an analogy that may be more realistic. You know, I have nothing but hope because I'm an immortal being. I'm an infinite life form. If you could see me the way I really am, Bill, it wouldn't be in this pathetic body with the...
It's only our bodies we're describing, not
Oh,
us.
that's right. You know, this is just a shell. I've had it for 79 years. I've used it badly, and I've abused it over the years, and I'm beginning to pay the lessons, or the prices for that. But if you could see me as I can see you, and we are shimmering beings of light.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Well, okay, I have a question for you because he's got a book out called End of Days.
Yes.
And in that book, he actually talks about Nibiru and the return, but he doesn't say that it's actually going to happen now.
He says he thinks it's about 2060. That was his estimate.
Okay, and so where does this information that you have and 2012, how do we put this all together? Because I'm going to say something about what you're telling us, because it's clear that you're something of an intelligence analyst yourself. You certainly have an incredible background. You can cross-correlate and so on. But you also have some insider contacts, and you also have contact with Anunnaki, as you said, all right? So where are you getting your information, and are they saying anything specific about what's happening 2012? Because I'm not so sure about Zachariah's conclusion.
That's 2060, but apparently it could be before that. The Department of Defense is quite concerned about it, that there are entire sections of the Defense Department that are working on that subject, and particularly. The big question is, are we in it going to be on the same side of the sun at the same time? And some of our remote viewers have concluded that yes, it's going to happen this time. That we and it will be on the same side of the sun at the same time. And if the remote viewer, and they're getting their information from ETs, and much of my information from the same source. And yes, we're in for some bad times.
And we're talking about while we're still here on the planet, because I don't know that we'd be alive during 2060.
Well, I don't know whether I'll still be here or not. You know, I'll be 80 in March, and, you know, I've got a ticket out of here.
Right.
I've got it stamped, I've got it paid.
But
I'm 9 years beyond my warranty as it is.
No, but I think you're going to live quite a while. So we've got this interesting thing going on, and we have a huge crackdown on anything to do with Planet X. It's been made the laughing stock. It's an amazing thing. Really.
Oh, the ridicule is.
I think it supersedes even the ET ridicule.
Oh, it does. It does.
I think it's been so strong, and it actually has come, I would say, from the Vatican. Mm-hmm. So what are they so afraid of, number one? And number two, have you heard the theory that basically what has to happen is a protective shield is going to be put around the Earth such that this time it's actually not going to have the impact that it has in the past?
I've heard that rumor in passing. And the technology exists to do that. Mm-hmm. What I have a suspicion is that much of what will transpire will be allowed to transpire. The Earth is not going to be destroyed, and the human race is not going to come to an end. But it is going to be a difficult period of time when it begins, and let me tell you, it has already begun. The reaction from the sun is a clear response to the presence of this other body. Now, this other body has already been photographed by telescopes in southern Chile and in New Zealand. I had asked Marcia to dig into her files. I had an article from a good friend who publishes a magazine in Rome. And Adriano, I don't know whether you know about Adriano Forgione, brilliant young man.
Yes.
Anyhow, he has connections with the Vatican. He has good friends who are Jesuit priests and astronomers. And the Vatican is concerned about it. Anyhow, Adriano sent me an article including 2 photographs that have been taken of Nibiru already, taken by primarily, I think, this observatory in Chile. But they've taken pictures at an observatory in New Zealand as well. So it's close enough now that optical telescopes have pictures of it. And they're studying it carefully to try to determine, what is it they call it, the celestial mechanics of how everything moves. Well, if our remote viewers are correct, and the ETs have given us some rundown on it, it's going to be a difficult passing. Because we and it are going to be on the same side of the sun at the same time, and that means all hell's going to break loose. Now, they have the technology. We're talking about not only Anunnaki. There are intelligences out there that began 1 billion years ago, then they have technology that puts them in a category of what Kaku would call a Type 3 civilization. Mm-hmm. So that a Type 3 civilization has the technology to mitigate the passing of Nibiru. Now, whether they do that, as you say, put a protective shield around it, Nibiru has done that for itself. They have a protective shield around their planet, which is why in the photographs it comes out as kind of reddish gold. And apparently that's why they came here for the gold in the first place, because they were losing their atmosphere, and they needed to seed gold particles in their atmosphere to keep the atmosphere from, they go on a long trip out there.
Okay, but the Anunnaki are here, you're saying, and yet the Anunnaki are supposedly on Nibiru as well, or what are you thinking, or what's your sources telling you about this?
The civilization, the Anunnaki civilization, is on the planet. But the Anunnaki are on this planet as well, all over the damn place, under the sea, at facilities that we know about, inside Mount Hayes in Alaska, inside Mount Perdido in the Pyrenees. There's one right in the middle of Australia, which is near Alice Springs. And what's the facility out there?
Pine Gap.
Pine Gap, yes, thank you, my friend. Pine Gap. And that happens to be the R&R facility, according to the remote viewers.
What's R&R? I'm sorry.
Rest and relaxation. It's what we used to call it in the military when we.
The R&R facility for who? What, the Anunnaki?
For the ET
Really?
and the Anunnakis, yes.
Pine Gap.
And they're dealing with human beings. They need rest and relaxation. But anyhow, the rumor is that Pine Gap is primarily an R&R facility.
Have you been there?
I've been to Australia. I haven't been to Pine Gap, no.
Would you lie to me?
Sometimes, maybe, but not right now, no.
Okay.
No, I haven't been to Pine Gap. A lot of my work has been a result of analyzing and sifting and evaluating the work of others. That's what an intelligence analyst does. Takes data from a variety of sources, but I have some information that I have been provided from sources within the U.S. government that tell me that yes, they are deeply concerned about it, and they're worried sick about it, and they don't know what to do about it, because we don't have the power to do a damn thing about it.
Is the estimated date, as best you are given to understand by your sources, in the next few years, rather than Sitchin's estimate of 2060?
Well, let me tell you something about, you're talking about 2012?
I'm talking, well, there are some serious Planet X researchers who say that we'll see the thing next year, and the thing's going to start.
I think you may see it next year, but I don't think you're going to have the hell breaking loose until maybe about 2020. you're going to have a build-up of factors. It's not going to happen all of a sudden, just like that. You're not going to go out the front door and all hell's breaking loose. You're going to see a series of events taking place involving our geologic structures. You're going to have increased volcanic activity. You're going to have increased sunspot activity. We're at a low right now, but you're going to see tremendous sunspot activity. You're going to see tremendous geologic activity. The ring of fire will probably erupt. Now, these are all going to be clues that all hell is coming, you know. You're going to have storms. The cyclones have been getting worse, and the hurricanes have been getting worse. You're going to be having hurricanes showing up in places that they really haven't troubled us for a long, long time. So you're going to have a build-up, not slowly, but a consistent build-up of geological and weather and sunspot activities. And you're probably going to, the estimate that I've heard from people who have studied it is about 2020.
Okay, but we have heard that Sitchin, as well-meaning as he may be, is working for the government. And my understanding would be is that they don't want this information out. So they're doing everything in their power to make sure that it's ridiculed, as we've observed.
Carrie, what could the government or anyone else tell you? What could they say to you? Would they tell you that grab your hat, dig a hole, hang on? Would anything they say?
Is that what the underground bases is all about?
Well, I have always had the conviction, and I've put this together over the years, that the so-called elite, the creme de la creme, when they're self-designated, you know, they have been preparing for chaos for years. It initially was initiated by the thermonuclear threat with the Soviets. Underground, fallout shelters where we could go. We had our own air conditioning. We can have our own food supplies and our own water supplies. That was a program that began that I worked very closely with when I was with FEMA over the years. I've been in underground facilities you wouldn't believe. Mm-hmm. And there are facilities everywhere that are not known. I mean, there's a big facility right under Fort Huachuca here in Arizona. I mean, a massive one. Never come out. I'm telling it now, but, there's a deep, massive underground facility under Fort Huachuca. They're all over the place. And I went to a Department of Energy school at Camp Mercury in Nevada. That was the first time I visited Site 51. Mm-hmm. I may have shared that with you. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, I went to school in 79. Department of Energy school on radioactive emergency disaster response. Anyhow.
So you went into the underground base at 51?
No, I talked to the guys who built some of them. I also took a bus ride over the pass from Camp Mercury, which is the atomic test facility there. I went into Site 51, Groom Lake, from the rear. And it was no big thing, just a tremendous facility there. Most of it was underground. And the hangars... So,
okay, first they reacted to the Soviet threat and all that, and the nuclear
It'll build
war.
up slowly, and it's already subtly begun. And they don't want to talk about it. No one wants to share it. I mean, look, for God's sake, the lid they've kept on the reality of ET activity on the moon and Mars. Mm-hmm. Oh, with the ridicule factor and the lid coming down, and I think Mendelberg did lose his life because he said too much. He says, it seems to be a rather nice planet, and we know about it, and all we need to do is name it. And then, bless his heart, he had never had a heart problem, but within a year he was dead with a heart attack. When Ike met that crowd at Muroc, which is now Edwards,
right,
in '54,
uh-huh.
he met the Anunnaki. Mm. Poor Ike, not long after that, had a heart attack. It was more than he was able to deal with. The shock of that reality took a toll on him. And that's one of the reasons why the Brookings report reached the conclusion it did. You can't tell those poor folks out there all this. They couldn't handle it. Well, BS, they can handle it. Damn, human beings can handle anything. I mean,
I have to agree with you.
we've gone through hell over the centuries. If we
Absolutely.
could handle Attila the Hun and Adolf Hitler, we can handle anything. We've been designed to handle anything. We haven't been designed to live very long. But then again, there's another story there.
Right.
Where did you think that this tremendous outpouring of knowledge on the double helix, our RNA, our DNA, and all of that has been coming forth? Is there some connection with the fact that maybe we now have a relationship with the guys who originally designed us in the first place?
Sure.
Of course we have. We're now in the process of redesigning and engineering our own DNA. And we're being told how, we're being shown how. And thank God they're sharing it with us now, because the first time poor old Adama and Ewa wanted the knowledge, they threw him out of the garden, as it were, you know. And that's another thing I want to talk about briefly in passing, is that there's no such thing as original sin. And that's a crock of manure that's been forced down your throats for thousands of years. There's no such thing as original sin. The human race never fell, it was pushed. And this species that you and I are a part of, this beautiful, wonderful, hopefully incredible race of humans, does have a future, and it is in the stars. And we are going out there to reclaim our rightful place, where we should have been in the first place.
Okay, and this gets into the secret space program and terraforming, because there is some terraforming going on, preparing for what might happen if Nibiru comes through and if the Earth is in such a state. We're talking about terraforming Mars, maybe beyond. Have you heard things about this?
Yes, terraforming is a fine art. It's been going on for millions of years. The Earth itself was terraformed.
Right.
You know, it was prepared. The garden was prepared for life. And then life was introduced and has been nurtured since, from the very beginning. Terraforming is a fine art, and some of those guys out there who've been around a billion years are pretty good at it. So, you see, I don't know whether they're planning to re-terraform us after Nibiru passes, or are they going to try to help alleviate the damage in the meantime? I would suspect that the latter. Maybe they are planning, through their engineering genius, and my God, the fact is that, you know, they've got artificially constructed objects in space in the rings of Saturn that are over 2,000 miles long. Spaceships, 2,000 miles long. I have pictures. I'll share next week.
Okay, what about John Walson? You know, are you familiar with his pictures of the craft around the sun?
I've heard of it, but I haven't
Okay.
seen them.
Just wondering.
We've got objects. I have photographs taken by Apollo 13 of alien ships 5 miles long, and I'm showing those over in San Jose.
Wonderful.
Now, those were taken by our own astronauts. Now, you get the guys on Apollo 13, and they're all, from what I understand, all three still alive. And you won't get a one of them to admit who snapped the shutter on that camera, but the film is there, and the negative number is there, the roll number is there, and there it is. NASA photograph of a 5-mile long artificial spaceship. Now, and that's small.
Well, let's talk about the astronauts for a minute, because what's going on with Clark McClelland, and why is he having such a problem coming forward?
I didn't know Clark was having a problem.
He has a book that he's trying to write. He's penniless. He's had a terrible time. They don't want him to talk.
No, they probably don't.
Okay. And have you talked to the astronauts? What about Edgar Mitchell? Have you talked to Edgar Mitchell?
I talked before he died with Gordon Cooper. I was on the phone a few times with Cooper. He even sent me a photograph of himself. I admired him because he was one of the mavericks who had the courage to come out and say what he had seen. I've known Ed Mitchell for some years. Every time I get a chance to see him, I chat with him, and I consider him a delightful man. He's very warm and terribly bright.
Are they mind controlled?
To some degree.
Have their minds been wiped?
Cooper never was.
Okay.
They never got to Gordon. And I don't think they got to Neil Armstrong either. But all of the rest of them, to some level, have been kind of, well, what's the word I'm looking for here? They have been conditioned not to speak. And they've had these little plots they've been working on all the time. This war, that war, the stock market crash, this, that, all these little magician things that while I'm showing you this hand, I'm picking your pocket with this one. They may have had that in mind at that time, but I don't think they're thinking of it seriously now, because I think that our so-called powers that be, which is a joke, are in such close relationship and collusion themselves, because I don't believe it would work. I don't think you can do that when you've got the real power out there that wouldn't allow that to happen.
Not so much an invasion, but a big display in the sky to create fear and to make people easier to control. Carol Rosin said that she had always been told by Werner von Braun many years ago.
Yeah, Werner shared that apparently before he died, that it was one of the programs that the government at the time was considering. And most of it is so far beyond our own. I used an analogy one time. And I said, they look upon us like we look upon headhunters in New Guinea. Now, you've seen the films, History channels and all the rest. They're naked, they're running around with these stupid things on their penises and, bones through their, whatever. Pathetic, sad, primitive savages. With the real power that it would never work, that they would never allow it. It's like they're not going to allow a thermonuclear war. Yeah. There's too much valuable real estate here. Not just this rich gold mine of human genetics. What a ripe reservoir we are of genes and, God, the whole species, plus all of the other fauna and all of the other flora. This is a valuable planet. And they love it. They own it. We've never owned it. We just live on it. They farm us, so to speak. God. Charles Fort was right, to some degree. We are property. And we're going to remain property until we reach a point where we can literally stand up and say, all right, we're going to do this now ourselves. And prove it to the universe. We're dealing with a universe filled with life.